find some balance in my life, but I never really put up a fight. Didn't follow my dreams, and now I'm losing sleep. What if
This project has 3 parts. In the first part of this video, I share how to make the pattern. In the second, I make the fabrics, and in the third part will be sewing. So starting off with the sewing pattern making, I have my tools here ready to go. I have my tape measure ready to take down my measurements, some pattern paper, my long metal ruler, my pattern master, my marker pen which I'll be using to draw my pattern. I also have this brown bias tape which I'm going to be using to make the shoulder straps for the dress, and then I have 2 rings and 2 gliders which makes the straps more adjustable when you have the garment on. So now you would need to take the following measurements: measure across your shoulder, across your upper chest, your bust line, decide on how long you want the dress to be, as well as around your top arm. I'm going to be working with a dress length of roughly 50 inches, so it's like proper full maxi all the way down to the floor, but it's really up to you to decide what you are comfortable with. And then I'm going to go into the top edge of your pattern paper, and I'm drawing a horizontal line that goes across like so. And on this horizontal line, I'm going to be marking 10 inches, which is the distance from one shoulder bone to the next, but times 2. So next up, I'm marking half of my around top arm or arm side measurement, and then I'm marking a quarter of my upper chest measurement, but times 2, because I really want the dress to be nice and roomy. So just factor in whatever your measurement is so you get the exact number that you will need for your own pattern. So I'm going to go back to the horizontal line, and I'm marking 4.5 inches downwards like this, and then I'm going in to draw a horizontal line that measures the shoulder line measurement that is above this one plus 2 inches. Then I'm going to be connecting the edge of that line to that point that we marked for our sort of like top chest measurement. So I'm just going in here to mark like my actual real upper chest measurement, so I have an idea of how much I need to gather back into the neckline of the dress. So I'm going in to curve in the front neckline slightly. I dropped it by about 2 inches give or take, because I wanted it to be a little bit curved on the front and then sort of like straight across the back. So I'm going in to draw in the side seam, and the sort of like width of the dress around the body is 16 inches, but I decided to create like an A-line silhouette slightly on the side by just making it slightly wider on the bottom and then sort of like straight on the top. So I'm going in here to draw in my dress hemline across like so, and after drawing in my hemline, I added my seam allowances. So at the hem, I added about 2 centimeter seam allowance, and on the side I added a 1 centimeter seam allowance around the arm curve and around the neckline as well. So I'm just working my way up to the top of the dress pattern, adding it across the arm curve like this. From this you can already tell this is sort of like half of what a typical arm curve should be, because we're going to be adding shoulder straps to the other half of the dress on that top area. So I'm just going in here to add my annotations, my grain line, as well as how many pieces I need to cut. And this particular piece that I cut out here is for the back. I just drew in the front neckline, so I know all I have to do is trace off on another pattern paper the neckline I want for the front, the side, the hem allowances as well, and then I know I have my front and my back dress patterns. You can use the same pattern piece if you want to sort of save pattern. All you have to do is shave down that neckline so you have the curve for the front of the dress, and then you have that straight neckline for the back. So these are the pattern pieces done. The difference with the front is the neckline is lower, and I curved in the arm curve slightly deeper for the front. Now moving on to step 2, which is the actual cutting and assembly of the patch pieces to make the dress. This was what took the most time. I gathered all of my scrap fabrics from 2-3 years ago, and I knew this would be a clever way to reuse them and not just throw them all away. Some scraps are slightly bigger than the other, but the piece or the patch I'm going to be working with measures 6 inches by 6. You can make a pattern piece for this, but I just decided to cut one sort of like main fabric and use that as my pattern in quotes to cut the other fabric pieces. So I only worked with woven fabrics. You have to keep that in mind. Fabrics of similar weights, similar weave, so when they're all joined together they behave in a similar way on your dress. So it will be very sort of tricky to use a very heavy denim with like a light cotton because it would weigh it down. So these are all of my pieces cut and ready to sew. I ended up cutting about 120 patches, 60 for the front and 60 for the back, and I had to literally join them one into the other. But if you cut several pieces at the same time, the process goes by a lot quicker. So the thing I'm doing here is I'm joining up the patches in sets of 6. So I have a row of 6 patches, and then I go and press like that row of 6 patches nice and flat to relax all of my seams. And I discovered using the overlocker made this a lot quicker because it just helped to finish the raw edge as well as join the patches together, because my overlocker stitches and overlocks the edge of the seam as well. But if you have to sew and then overlock, it might take slightly longer. So after doing that, I am joining my sets of 6 rows of patches together along this horizontal side. So you sort of like join 6 next to the next set until you have a long piece of material made up of your patchwork. So I ended up doing this for the front and for the back. So I had 2 separate sets of like material to cut the front and the back of the dress. I would say this was about 3 meters of fabric roughly. Like if you would join everything together, it was 3 meters of fabric roughly. It took me a whole day to do this, so just take your time because it's very time consuming, cutting and sewing and ironing, but if it's done well, it is actually worth it. So now that we have all of our patches joined together, it's actually time to sew the dress. I went ahead to pin down my pattern onto my patch fabric in quotes, and I'm just cutting out the side seam like so, making my way to the top of the dress, and I'm going to cut out the front and the back. So these are both sides of the dress cut out ready to sew. As I mentioned earlier on, they're really similar in terms of like shape on the side and on the hem, but the difference is the neckline and the arm curve. So once you have all of your pieces ready to go, the first thing you need to do is to gather in the excess on the neckline in so it actually sits flat on your neck. So I'm sewing here with the longest stitch on my machine, so I'm able to pull that thread to create gathers on the neckline. So I'm just starting out with the front, and I'm going to be pulling the bobbin thread and just sort of like shift the gathering that it makes as you pull, and then adjust it in such a way that you have the gathers only on the like the middle or the center of the neckline. So if you had cut the notches marking how much you needed to gather that neckline in, you would have an idea of what this sort of gathered neckline should be, and whatever that neckline should be according to your measurement or the measurement of your client, you cut out a bias tape that you would use to finish off that raw edge. So I like to sew this type of neckline in 2 phases. I go in one time like this, and then I go back and fold the tape to conceal the raw edge. So now I'm just sewing. So this is the right side of my fabric, and I'm sewing the neckline of the dress to one edge of the bias tape, and then I'm going to go back and fold the bias tape over the raw edge. And this is me stitching on the right side of the garment, so I have a certain level of control over how nice and neat the seam on that right side of the neckline turns out. So I'm making my way to the edge here, joining the bias tape to the neckline of the dress, and you need to do this for the front and for the back neckline, so you finish off that part of the garment and you don't have to think about it later on. So once you're done working on the necklines, you can go ahead and join the side seams together. I like to just sort of put right sides together of my garment, so front onto the back. You can add some pins if that would prevent things from moving around, and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance and then overlocking afterwards, so I have a nicely finished garment even on the inside. So once you're done with that, the next thing you need to work on is joining the shoulder straps into the armhole or the arm curve of your dress. So I'm going to grab my shoulder straps. You need to cut 2 sets one that is 25 inches long, which is the longer one, and the shorter one, which is 3 inches, which is where your ring is going to sit on the back. So starting off with the longer one, I am pinning from the back neckline, making my way to the front, and we're going to be joining the bias tape to conceal that armhole opening and then sew close the remaining parts of the bias tape using this bias binding footer, which is from a bias maker kit. If you haven't seen that video already, make sure to go check that out, because that's where I got this footer from. It just makes joining the bias tape to the garment a lot easier, and it just makes the finishing look a lot nicer. So once I'm done sewing that part of the arm curve, I just continue to sew. So I join and close up the bias tape to create a nice shoulder strap that I am going to be sort of wearing across the shoulder of my garment. Now you would need to stitch up or stitch close the tinier or the 3-inch strap and then pass your ring across the top end like so. And you would need to do this on the back neckline, because this ring would help you to attach the glider, which makes the strap adjustable. So I'm going to get the glider and pass the strap through one end like this and through the other end like so, and then I'm going to pull it across and then loop it around the ring, which is attached to the back neckline, and then I'm going to pass it in between the sort of like dividing steel part of the glider. So you pass it underneath like this, and then you pull it out again, so you are able to join the very end of the strap to this side of the shoulder strap here. So once you close off that end, it gives you the ability to make the strap longer or shorter if you wanted to. You need to do this for the left and for the right hand side, so you have shoulder straps for the dress. So once you are done with that, the last thing you need to work on is the hemline. I went ahead to fold the hemline twice and then just stitched it all the way across. I just used the same color of thread because I thought it was pointless to change the thread every single time you had a new patch fabric, but it's up to you. If you feel up to the task, you have the freedom to do so as well. So once I was done doing that, I gave my garment a nice press to relax all of my seams, and this is what the finished piece looks like. It is so comfortable, it's actually ridiculous. Like, it's nice and roomy. Something else you could consider adding is adding pockets on the side seam. If you are a lover of pockets, you can add an inseam pocket or a patch pocket in front. But besides that, there's nothing else I would really change about this dress. It turned out really nice, and it was a great way to upcycle all of the scrap fabrics that I had, and I really didn't know what to do with them. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts, ideas, and suggestions down below, and I would love to see your recreations on this dress. Make sure to tag me on Instagram at KimDaveDesigns, because I know some of you will do a really fantastic job. But until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye.
I really wanted to get it right.